Freebies. That is the word Donald Trump used to describe what Canada gets from the United States. He said it at Davos. He said it on camera. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us. They should be grateful. So 2 months later, Mark Carney sat down in Tokyo for an interview with Monocle magazine and revealed 5 numbers that Washington never wanted the world to hear. 2%. That is what Canada now spends on defense as a share of GDP. The NATO target met for the first time since the Cold War. The last time Canada spent this much defending itself, Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister and the Soviet Union still existed. Trump's entire argument that Canada is a defense freeloader collapsed in a single sentence spoken in a Tokyo hotel. But here's what the media completely missed. The 2% is not the ceiling, it is the floor. Carney confirmed $500 billion in defense and infrastructure investment over the next decade. Submarines, aircraft, drones, AI, quantum computing, the tools a nation needs not to fight the last war, but to prevent the next one. And while Trump was calling Canada ungrateful at Davos, Carney was already planning a trip to 3 continents: India, Australia, Japan, strategic partnerships worth billions, a $6 billion radar system that watches the Arctic 24 hours a day, built with Australia, not America. If you want to stay ahead of this story, subscribe and hit the bell. We cover this daily. Now let me show you what Carney actually said, because the details are extraordinary. Let me break this down, because the details matter. The interview took place at Canada's Tokyo Embassy, one of the finest diplomatic missions in the world, designed by Japanese-Canadian architect Raymond Moriyama. Carney worked in Tokyo for Goldman Sachs in the 1990s. He speaks working Japanese. This was not a courtesy visit. This was a homecoming. And what he revealed changes the math entirely. Canada will spend $180 billion directly on military procurement over the next decade. Another $290 billion on defense-related infrastructure. Ports, AI systems, cyber defenses, dual-use technology that protects civilians and soldiers alike. Bloomberg confirmed every number. Now understand why this matters. Carney made a point that every Canadian over 60 will recognize immediately. He said Canada is not pouring money into tanks because that is what we did in the Second World War. It made sense then. It does not make sense now. The generation that built this country with steel and sacrifice deserves a military rebuilt for the threats of this century. And those threats include hypersonic missiles coming over the North Pole. While Trump was demanding gratitude, Carney was signing a $6 billion deal with Australia for the most advanced over-the-horizon radar system on the planet. The Jindalee Operational Radar Network. It bounces signals off the ionosphere to see around the curvature of the Earth, 3,000 kilometers of detection range. Canada is the first country outside Australia to access this technology. Trump has publicly suggested he wants control of the Arctic. Canada just built the system that watches over the North Pole. And this is where it gets really interesting. Here's where it gets fascinating. Do you see what's happening here? Trump said Canada should be grateful for American protection. Carney built a radar system with Australia. Trump said Canada is a freeloader. Carney hit the 2% NATO target for the first time in 35 years. Trump threatened tariffs on Canadian auto exports. Japanese companies now build 77% of every car manufactured in Canada. Connect those dots. In 2016, American automakers built 56% of Canadian vehicles. Japanese companies built 44%. Those numbers have completely reversed. Honda and Toyota now dominate Canadian auto production, while Detroit 3 output has collapsed. The Trillium Network at Western University confirmed every figure. American automakers walked out under pressure from Washington. Japan filled every gap. And Carney dropped another number in Tokyo. Over the next decade, Canada will invest about $500 billion. A significant proportion is in defense, submarines, aircraft, drones, material necessary particularly to protect our Arctic, which is where the threats are rising. Critics argue these are just pledges without binding commitments. The data tells a different story. The Atlantic Council confirmed Canada met the 2% target in 2025. NATO confirmed all allies will hit the benchmark this year. Canada's defense minister confirmed the spending is already flowing. So here is the question. Did Trump's pressure force Canada to spend more, or did Trump's threats push Canada to build these capabilities with everyone except America? Drop your answer in the comments. But here's the part that should make every Canadian pay attention. Let me show you what Canada just built without asking Washington's permission. Carney described the architecture in the Monocle interview. The goal is to bring together the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union as one connected trading bloc of 1.5 billion people. In fact, it would be far and away the biggest trading bloc in the world. Read that again. 1.5 billion people. Politico confirmed in February 2026 that EU and Indo-Pacific bloc talks are formally open. Canada is positioned as the bridge between them. If this trading bloc forms, it becomes larger than any arrangement Trump has ever threatened to cancel. Canada's trade exposure to the United States shrinks from a vulnerability into a choice. And the human cost of Trump's threats is already showing. American auto workers are losing shifts while Japanese plants in Ontario run at capacity. American LNG companies are watching Canada sign energy deals with Japan and India. American defense contractors are watching Canada buy radar technology from Australia. Let that sink in. Canada hit the 2% defense target. Canada signed strategic partnerships on 3 continents. Canada is building a trading bloc of 1.5 billion people. Canada bought a $6 billion radar system that watches the Arctic without American involvement. Canada now builds 77% of its cars with Japanese companies that are not afraid to defy an American president. These investments do not expire. The radar is already under construction. The trade delegations are already scheduled. The defense contracts are already signed. So where does this end? The answer is permanent. The end game is clear. Trump called Canada ungrateful. Carney built an alternative. Trump demanded gratitude for American protection. Carney bought Australian radar technology. Trump threatened economic isolation. Carney formed strategic partnerships with Japan, India, and Australia. The assumption that kept Canada dependent on American goodwill for generations was simple. You have nowhere else to go. That assumption is now broken. The 2% defense target was not met to please Washington. It was met because Canada needs to defend itself when allies become unpredictable. The $500 billion investment is not flowing to American defense contractors. Carney said directly that 75 cents of every defense dollar used to go to the United States. That ratio is changing. And the trading bloc Carney described in Tokyo, Europe, Australia, Canada, Japan, South Korea, their combined GDP is larger than the United States, larger than America. Those are Carney's exact words from the Monocle interview. While Trump was calling Canada ungrateful at Davos, Carney was planning the trip that would prove him wrong. While Washington was demanding gratitude, Ottawa was signing deals. While the White House issued threats, the Prime Minister's office dispatched trade delegations to 3 continents. Everything I've shown you tonight comes from public reporting, but the conclusions are mine. You decide what it means. If this analysis opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe if you haven't. And our last video covered the full Indo-Pacific tour that made all of this possible. Link is on screen. Watch it now. This is Voice of Canada.